They called her just a waitress. They thought she was invisible, uneducated, and beneath their notice. When Harrison Sterling, the ruthlessly arrogant CEO of Sterling Global, walked into the restaurant that night, he placed a $10,000 bet that he could break her spirit. He switched languages from French to German, then to Mandarin, mocking her right to her face, convinced she didn't understand a word. He was wrong. Dead wrong. He didn't know that the woman pouring his wine wasn't just a server. She was a linguistic prodigy hiding a dangerous secret. And when she finally opened her mouth, she didn't just translate his insults. She exposed a conspiracy that would bring his empire to its knees. This is the story of the waitress who silenced a billionaire. The rain battered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Obsidian Room, Manhattan's most exclusive dining establishment. Located on the 60th floor of the Blackwood Tower, the restaurant offered a panoramic view of the storm sweeping over New York City, turning the lights of Times Square into a blurry kaleidoscope of color. Inside, the atmosphere was hermetically sealed from the chaos. The air smelled of white truffle, aged mahogany, and old money. Isla Corcoran adjusted the collar of her stiff white uniform. Her feet throbbed. She had been on a double shift since 6 in the morning, and it was now nearly 9 at night. The heels required by the restaurant's dress code were digging into her arches, sending sharp jolts of pain up her calves with every step, but her face remained a mask of serene, professional indifference. At 26, Isla had mastered the art of being invisible. To the patrons of the Obsidian Room, she was not a person. She was a pair of floating hands that refilled water glasses, replaced silverware, and disappeared before anyone could be bothered to say, "Thank you." "Table 4 needs a refill on the Pinot," snapped Gregory, the floor manager. Gregory was a short man with a mustache that looked as if it had been drawn on with a marker. He treated the staff like cattle and the customers like gods. "And look alive, Corcoran. We have a VIP incoming. The owner called ahead." Isla nodded, grabbing a fresh bottle of sparkling water. "Who is it?" "Harrison Sterling," Gregory whispered, the name dripping from his lips like honey. "CEO of Sterling Heavy Industries. He's closing the merger with the European logistics giant, Kruger Van. He's bringing the German delegation and his personal legal counsel." Isla's stomach tightened, but not from excitement. Harrison Sterling. The tabloids called him the Prince of Steel. He was 32, worth $14 billion, and had a reputation for chewing up employees and spitting them out before breakfast. He was known for his cold precision and his utter lack of patience for incompetence. "I'll handle the water service," Isla said quietly. "Just don't embarrass us," Gregory hissed, smoothing his lapels. "Sterling is particular. If the water isn't poured at exactly 45 degrees, he notices. If you breathe too loudly, he notices." Isla turned away, hiding the flicker of annoyance in her eyes. If only Gregory knew. If only any of them knew that before the medical bills piled up, before her father's diagnosis had drained her savings and forced her to drop out of her PhD program, Isla hadn't just been studying languages. She had been the top simultaneous interpreter in her cohort at the Geneva School of Interpreters. She had translated for diplomats in Brussels and trade envoys in Tokyo. But credentials didn't pay for dialysis machines. Tips did. So, she swallowed her pride, put on the uniform, and became invisible. The elevator doors at the end of the hall slid open with a soft chime. The restaurant went silent. Harrison Sterling walked in. He was taller than he looked in the magazines, wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that likely cost more than Isla's annual rent. His jaw was sharp, his eyes the color of cold steel, and he moved with the predatory grace of a jungle cat entering a clearing. Flanking him were 3 men. To his left was Gunther Kruger, the portly German CEO, red-faced and boisterous. To his right was a sharp-featured Italian man, Alessandro Rossi, a consultant. Trailing behind them was Harrison's fiancée, Leah Thorne. Leah was beautiful in the way a diamond is beautiful, hard, cold, and sharp enough to cut you. Gregory practically sprinted to the host stand. "Mr. Sterling, Herr Kruger, welcome, welcome. Your usual table is ready." Harrison didn't even look at him. He just gave a curt nod, his eyes scanning the room as if looking for flaws in the architecture. "The corner booth. We need privacy. We're discussing terms." "Of course, right this way." As the group passed Isla, Leah Thorne stopped. She looked Isla up and down, her lip curling slightly. "Harrison," Leah said, her voice high and grating, "why does the staff here always look so drab? I thought you said this place was high class." Harrison glanced at Isla. For a split second, their eyes met. His gaze was piercing, analyzing her in a way that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. He saw the frayed hem of her sleeve, the dark circles she had tried to cover with concealer, the scuffed leather of her shoes. "Focus, Leah," Harrison said, his voice deep and dismissive. "I'm here to buy a shipping fleet, not critique the furniture." He walked past her without another glance. Isla let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She thought she was safe. She thought she could just pour the water, serve the steak, and go home to her father. But the night was just beginning. Isla waited 5 minutes before approaching the table. The golden rule of high-end service. Let the guests settle, but never let them wait. When she arrived at table 4, the tension was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. The table was covered in documents, moved aside only slightly for the bread plates. "Water," Harrison commanded without looking up from a dossier. Isla moved silently to his right side. She wrapped the bottle in a linen napkin and poured. The stream was steady, silent, and perfect. "The numbers don't make sense, Harrison," Gunther Kruger said, speaking in heavy, rapid German. He clearly assumed the waitress hovering over them was nothing more than part of the scenery. "Sie versuchen uns zu betrügen. Diese Bewertung ist viel zu hoch für die Vermögenswerte, die sie anbieten. They are trying to cheat us. This valuation is way too high for the assets you are offering." Isla's hand didn't shake, but her mind instantly translated the sentence. "Cheating. Valuation too high," Harrison replied in perfect, crisp German. "Gunther, don't be dramatic. The valuation includes the proprietary AI logistics software. You know that's worth billions alone." Isla moved to pour for Alessandro Rossi. The Italian man leaned back, smiling greasy at Leah. He switched to Italian, lowering his voice. "Is he actually going to sign? This American is arrogant. If he knew what we were hiding in the Naples accounts, he would run away screaming." Isla froze for a fraction of a second. The bottle clinked almost imperceptibly against the glass. "Hidden accounts in Naples?" Harrison looked up sharply. He hadn't heard the Italian, or perhaps he didn't speak it well enough to catch the rapid-fire slang Alessandro had used. But he had heard the glass clink. "Careful," Harrison snapped at Isla. "This is a $5,000 suit. If you spill, you'll be paying for it for the next 10 years. "Apologies, sir," Isla said softly, her eyes lowered. Leah laughed, sipping her martini. "Oh, don't be so harsh, darling. She's probably nervous being this close to a man who owns the building she lives in. Or maybe she's just clumsy. It's hard to find good help these days. They're all so simple." Isla finished pouring and took a step back, clutching the tray against her chest. She wanted to leave. She wanted to walk away and pretend she hadn't heard Alessandro admit to financial fraud. But she needed this job. Harrison watched Isla retreat. He narrowed his eyes. He was a man who lived by reading people, and something about the waitress bothered him. She was too quiet, too observant. And when Gunther had shouted in German, she hadn't flinched, but her eyes had flickered toward him. She was listening, Harrison murmured, switching to English. Who? The waitress? Leah scoffed. Harrison, please, look at her. She looks like she struggles to read the dinner specials. I doubt she understands corporate valuation discussions in German. I don't like loose ends, Harrison said, tapping his finger on the table. And I don't like people hovering while I discuss sensitive mergers. Alessandro laughed. You Americans are paranoid. She is a peasant. She cares about tips, not logistics. Harrison looked at his guests. A cruel idea formed in his mind. He was bored. The negotiations were dragging, and he needed a way to assert dominance, to show Gunther and Alessandro that he was in control of everything in his environment, including the people. Let's make it interesting, Harrison said, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. A wager. Gunther raised an eyebrow. What kind of wager? I bet you $10,000, Harrison said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, that I can make that waitress cry within 10 minutes, or at the very least, prove that she's as empty-headed as she looks. Leah clapped her hands delightedly. Oh, this will be fun. Do it. But not just by yelling, Harrison added. I'm going to test her. I want to see if she has any brain cells in that head of hers. I'm going to order in languages she can't possibly know. If she messes up, I get the meal for free, and you sign the contract tonight without further negotiation. Gunther chuckled. And if she understands? Harrison laughed, a dry, humorless sound. If a waitress at the Obsidian Room understands technical German and Neapolitan dialect, then I'll double the offer on your stock options. Deal. Gunther slammed his hand on the table. Isla was standing by the service station, watching them. She saw the handshake. She didn't hear the terms, but she saw the way they looked at her. Like a toy. Gregory, the manager, walked up to her, pale and sweating. Corcoran, Mr. Sterling just signaled. He wants you back at the table, exclusively. No other servers. Why? Isla asked, a cold dread pooling in her stomach. I don't know, and I don't care, Gregory snapped. Just go, and whatever he asks for, you say, yes, sir, and you do it. Isla took a deep breath. She smoothed her apron. She walked back into the lion's den. As Isla approached table 4, the atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer a business meeting. It was a spectator sport. Leah was recording on her phone, angling it so it looked casual, but the red light was blinking. You signaled for me, sir? Isla asked, her voice steady. Harrison didn't look at the menu. He looked directly at her, his blue eyes icy and challenging. I've decided to change my order, Harrison said. But I want to be very specific about how it's prepared. And since this is an international establishment, I assume you can accommodate requests from our guests in their native tongues. I can try my best to relay the message to the chef, sir, Isla said. Good. Harrison gestured to Alessandro. Start. Alessandro leaned forward, a smirk on his lips. He spoke rapidly in Italian, but he used a specific, complex dialect from the Veneto region mixed with fast culinary jargon. Voglio il risotto al nero di seppia, ma il brodo deve essere fatto con crostacei freschi, non congelati, e voglio che il riso sia tostato per esattamente 3 minuti, con scalogno e vino bianco secco. Niente prezzemolo. Se vedo del verde nel piatto, lo lancio contro il muro. I want the squid ink risotto, but the broth must be made with fresh shellfish, not frozen, and I want the rice toasted for exactly 3 minutes with shallots and dry white wine. No parsley. If I see green on the plate, I throw it against the wall. Alessandro finished and crossed his arms, waiting for the confusion, waiting for Isla to ask him to repeat it in English. Isla stood still. She looked at Alessandro, She knew he expected her to crumble. She turned to Harrison. He was watching her, waiting for the failure. Isla pulled out her notepad. She didn't ask for a translation. She wrote for 2 seconds. Then she looked at Alessandro and spoke. "No parsley, sir. Understood. And I will ensure the chef knows the shellfish must be fresh." She spoke in English, but the comprehension was obvious. The smile dropped from Alessandro's face. Harrison sat up straighter. "Lucky guess," he muttered. "Everyone knows no parsley." "My turn," Gunther grunted. He was determined to win the bet. He switched to a heavy Bavarian German, barking out orders about the preparation of the veal schnitzel, demanding specific sourcing of the veal and a particular temperature for the frying oil, using metric measurements that would confuse an average American. Das Kalbfleisch muss hauchdünn geklopft sein, 2 Millimeter, nicht mehr. Und die Panade darf das Fleisch nicht berühren, sie muss soufflieren. Braten Sie es in Butterschmalz bei 170 Grad Celsius. Isla finished writing. She looked at Gunther. 2 millimeters thick, soufflé-style breading, fried in clarified butter at 170 degrees Celsius. I will inform the kitchen immediately, Herr Kruger. The table went silent. Leah lowered her phone slightly. Wait, does she speak German? Harrison's face hardened. He was losing control of the situation. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man who prided himself on being the smartest person in the room. To be outsmarted by a waitress in a stained apron was unacceptable. Impressive, Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave. But basic culinary terms are one thing. Let's try something else. He looked at Isla. Do you know who I am? You are Mr. Harrison Sterling, Isla replied. I do business all over the world, Harrison said. I spent 3 years in Shanghai. Isla's heart skipped a beat. Mandarin. Harrison leaned in. He spoke in Mandarin Chinese, his tones sharp and aggressive. But he didn't order food. He tested her. Ni kan kilai shange kong ming de nuren, dan ni zai zeli lang fei, ni de sheng ming. Gao su wo, ni shi zhen de dong wo zai shuo shen me, hai shi ni zi shi zai zhuang kiang zuo shi. You look like a smart woman, but you are wasting your life here. Tell me, do you really understand what I am saying, or are you just posturing? The restaurant seemed to blur around Isla. The sheer arrogance of the man. He was insulting her life, her choices, right to her face, hiding behind a language barrier he assumed was impenetrable. She remembered her father in the hospital bed, the machines beeping. She remembered the late nights studying characters until her eyes burned. She remembered the pride she felt when she got her degree, before the debt crushed her. She looked Harrison Sterling in the eye. She broke the cardinal rule of service. She stopped being invisible. She replied in flawless Mandarin, her tones perfect, her accent indistinguishable from a native speaker from Beijing. Wo de shengming bing meiyu langfei, Sterling shansheng. Wo zishi zai dengdai yege zide, wo shuohua de ren. Danshi kan lai, zhentian wanshang, wo haishi meiyu zhaodao. My life is not wasted, Mr. Sterling. I'm just waiting for someone worth speaking to. But it seems tonight I still haven't found him. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the clinking of silverware at the nearby tables seemed to stop. Harrison stared at her, his mouth slightly open. The shock was genuine. Leah gasped. What did she say? Harrison, what did she say? Harrison didn't answer. He was looking at Isla with a mixture of fury and fascination. 5 languages, Harrison whispered. English, German, Italian, Mandarin. What is the 5th? French, Isla said, switching to the language of diplomacy, her voice cool and crisp like a winter morning in Paris. C'est la langue dans laquelle je vais vous dire que votre associé italien vous vole. It is the language in which I will tell you that your Italian associate is stealing from you." Alessandro Rossi froze. His face went white. "What did you say?" Alessandro shouted in English, standing up and knocking his chair over. "You lying little—" "Sit down, Alessandro," Harrison roared. He turned his gaze back to Isla. The game was over. The reality had just begun. "Explain," Harrison commanded. "Now." Isla clutched her notepad. She had gone too far. She had just accused a VIP's partner of theft in the middle of the dining room. Gregory was running toward the table, his face purple with rage. "You're fired!" Gregory screamed from 10 feet away. "Corcoran, get out! Get out now!" "Let her speak!" Harrison barked at the manager, his voice echoing off the glass walls. He looked back at Isla. "You understood what he said earlier, in Italian." "I did," Isla said, her voice trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. "Repeat it." "He said," Isla pointed at Alessandro, "that if you knew what they were hiding in the Naples accounts, you would run away screaming. He admitted the valuation is fraudulent." Harrison slowly turned his head toward Alessandro. The Italian consultant was sweating profusely, dabbing his forehead with a napkin. "She is lying," Alessandro stammered. "She is a waitress. She wants money. She is making it up." "Why would she make up something so specific about the Naples accounts?" Harrison asked softly. "I never mentioned Naples to her. Only you know about the Naples branch." Harrison stood up. He buttoned his jacket. The predator was back. "Gunther," Harrison said to the German CEO, "the deal is off, pending a full forensic audit of the Naples books." Gunther looked furious, glaring at Alessandro. "You idiot," he hissed in German. Harrison turned back to Isla. "You just saved me about $400 million. "I was just doing my job, sir," Isla said stiffly. "Would you still like the risotto?" Harrison actually laughed, a real, genuine laugh that startled even Leah. "No," Harrison said. "I've lost my appetite. But you're finished here." Isla felt the blood drain from her face. "Sir?" "You're too smart to be pouring water," Harrison said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, black business card. "Report to my office at Sterling Global tomorrow morning at 8:00 a.m. Don't be late." "I can't," Isla said. "I have a shift tomorrow." "Gregory," Harrison said, not looking at the manager. "Yes, Mr. Sterling?" Gregory squeaked. "Fire her. Right now." "She's fired. Done!" Gregory yelled. Harrison smirked at Isla. "See? You're free. 8:00 a.m. We have a lot to discuss." He threw a stack of $100 bills on the table, the wager money, and walked out, leaving his entourage scrambling to follow him. Isla stood alone in the center of the restaurant, the cash sitting on the table, unemployed, terrified, and exhilarated. But as she watched Harrison leave, she knew one thing. This wasn't a job offer. It was another test, and the stakes were about to get much higher. The Sterling Global headquarters did not look like an office building. It looked like a fortress built of obsidian and judgment. Standing 60 stories tall in the heart of the financial district, it cast a long, imposing shadow over the street below. Isla Corcoran stood at the revolving doors at 7:50 a.m. She was wearing her only professional outfit, a navy blue blazer she had bought for her doctoral thesis defense 3 years ago, paired with black slacks that had been carefully ironed to hide the wear in the fabric. She clutched her battered leather satchel, her knuckles white. She felt like an imposter. Last night, she had been serving wine to these people. Today, she was walking into their sanctuary. She approached the security desk, a sleek marble slab manned by 2 guards who looked more like private military contractors than receptionists. "Name?" the guard asked without looking up. "Isla Corcoran. I have an appointment with Mr. Sterling." The guard paused. He looked up, scanning her face with a mixture of skepticism and amusement. He checked his tablet. "I don't see a Corcoran on the visitor list." "He told me to come at 8 a.m., Isla said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "Check again." "Look, miss," the guard sighed, leaning back. "Mr. Sterling doesn't just meet with people off the street. Unless you're with the cleaning crew, and the service entrance is around the—" The elevator bank behind the desk dinged. A tall, severe-looking woman with a tight bun and glasses that looked like architectural drafting tools stepped out. She walked with a clipboard held like a shield. "Is that Miss Corcoran?" the woman asked sharply. The guard scrambled to sit up straight. "Ms. Croft, I was just telling her." "Mr. Sterling is waiting," the woman cut him off. She turned to Isla. "I am Cecilia Croft, Mr. Sterling's executive assistant. You are 3 minutes late." "It's 7:55, Isla noted. "Mr. Sterling operates on Sterling time. If you are not 5 minutes early, you are late. Follow me." Isla followed Cecilia through the security gates, feeling the eyes of the lobby staff burning into her back. They rode the private elevator to the penthouse floor in silence. The numbers on the display climbed rapidly, 30, 40, 50, 60. With every floor, the air seemed to get thinner, colder, and more expensive. When the doors opened, Isla stepped onto plush grey carpet that swallowed the sound of her heels. The entire floor was open plan but empty, save for a massive glass office at the far end that overlooked the Statue of Liberty. Cecilia opened the heavy glass door. "Go in. Don't sit unless he tells you to." Harrison Sterling was standing by the window, his back to the door. He was on the phone, speaking in rapid-fire Japanese. "If they don't lower the steel tariffs, pull the funding from the Tokyo project. I don't care if the minister is upset. Make him understand pain." He hung up and turned around. He looked different in the daylight, sharper, more dangerous. He wasn't wearing a jacket, and his white dress shirt was rolled up to the elbows, revealing forearms that looked surprisingly strong for a corporate executive. He stared at Isla for a long, uncomfortable moment. He didn't say hello. He didn't smile. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to a low leather chair in front of his massive desk. Isla sat. She placed her bag on her lap. Harrison picked up a file from his desk, a manila folder with her name on it. "Isla Marie Corcoran," he read aloud, his voice devoid of emotion. "Born in Chicago, valedictorian of her high school, full scholarship to Yale for linguistics, graduated summa cum laude. Master's degree from the Geneva School of Interpreters, specialized in simultaneous translation for diplomatic envoys, fluent in English, French, German, Mandarin, Italian, and conversational in Russian and Arabic." He tossed the file onto the desk. It landed with a heavy slap. "And now," Harrison said, leaning back, "working as a waitress at the Obsidian Room for $12 an hour plus tips." "Why?" Isla felt a flush of heat rise up her neck. She hated this part. She hated the pity, or worse, the judgment. "Personal circumstances," she said tightly. "Your father," Harrison said bluntly. "Patrick Corcoran, former structural engineer, diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's and stage 4 kidney failure 2 years ago. Requires 24-hour care and dialysis 3 times a week. Your insurance capped out 6 months ago. You sold your apartment, your car, and liquidated your savings to pay for a private care facility in Queens." Isla's hands trembled. She stood up abruptly. "How dare you? You have no right to investigate my family." "I have every right to know who I'm letting into my building," Harrison said calmly. "Sit down." "I'm leaving," Isla said, turning toward the door. "I'm not a charity case, and I'm not a toy for you to play with." "I'm not offering charity." Harrison's voice stopped her at the door. "I'm offering a solution." Isla froze. She turned back. Harrison stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the edge. You need $40,000 a month to keep your father in that facility. On your waitress salary, you'll be bankrupt in 3 weeks, and he'll be moved to a state ward where the nurse-to-patient ratio is 1 to 50. He'll be dead in a month. The cruelty of the truth hit Isla like a physical blow. She bit her lip to keep from crying. What do you want? I need a translator, Harrison said. You have translators, Isla countered. You have an entire legal department. I have lawyers who speak languages, Harrison corrected. I have software that translates documents. But I don't have ears. He walked closer to her, invading her personal space. He smelled of sandalwood and power. Last night, you didn't just translate words. You understood intent. You heard the inflection in Alessandro's voice, the specific dialect that signaled he was hiding something. That is a rare gift, Isla. Most people listen to reply. You listen to understand. Harrison crossed his arms. I'm about to enter into a series of negotiations that will determine the future of this company. I am surrounded by sharks, competitors, regulators, even my own board members. They all smile in English and plot in their native tongues. I need someone who can walk into a room and be invisible. Someone they won't suspect. Someone they'll dismiss as just an assistant or just a pretty face, while you absorb everything they say. He held out a contract. Title, Executive Liaison. Salary, $20,000 a month, plus a $50,000 signing bonus. Full medical benefits, including coverage for immediate family members with pre-existing conditions. Isla stared at the paper. It was a lifeline. It was a miracle. It was everything she needed to save her father. What's the catch? She whispered. The catch, Harrison said, his eyes darkening, is that you belong to me. You are on call 24/7. You travel when I say travel. You speak when I say speak. And most importantly, you sign an NDA that says if you breathe a word of what you hear in my meetings to anyone, the press, the police, your friends, I will not only fire you, I will bury you in so much litigation you won't see sunlight for a decade. He held out a pen. Do we have a deal, Miss Corcoran? Isla looked at the pen. She thought of her father, sitting in his wheelchair, looking out the window, forgetting her name a little more every day. She took the pen. She signed her name. Good, Harrison said, snatching the paper back before the ink was dry. Cecilia will get you a company phone and a corporate credit card for a wardrobe update. Those clothes are unacceptable. Thank you, sir, Isla said, feeling a strange mix of relief and entrapment. Don't thank me yet, Harrison said, walking back to his desk. We have a meeting in 20 minutes with the delegation from Dubai. And Isla? Yes? Don't ever lie to me. I can forgive incompetence, but I destroy liars. Isla nodded. She had walked into the lion's den, and the lion had just put a collar on her. But as she left the office, clutching the heavy contract, she knew one thing. She would do anything to keep that collar if it meant keeping her father alive, even if it meant selling her soul to Harrison Sterling. The wardrobe update was less of a shopping trip and more of a tactical reconfiguration. Cecilia Croft had driven Isla to a boutique on Fifth Avenue that didn't have prices on the tags. Within an hour, Isla was transformed. The ill-fitting blazer was gone, replaced by a tailored charcoal pencil skirt, a silk cream blouse, and a pair of black stilettos that were surprisingly comfortable. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek chignon, and her makeup was professionally applied to highlight her cheekbones. When she returned to the office, she didn't look like a waitress anymore. She looked like a weapon. Harrison didn't compliment her. He simply glanced at her, checked his watch, and marched toward the elevators. "Keep up. The Dubai delegation is in the boardroom." As they walked through the executive hallway, a man stepped out of a side office to intercept them. He was in his mid-40s, handsome in a rugged, slick way, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Harrison," the man said, blocking their path. "I didn't see the briefing materials for the Al Fayed meeting." "That's because you're not invited, Grant," Harrison said, without slowing down. Isla recognized him from the company website she had hurriedly scanned on her phone. This was Grant Holloway, the Chief Operating Officer, COO, the second most powerful man in Sterling Global. Grant's smile faltered. He fell into step beside Harrison. "I'm the COO. It's a logistics merger. I should be there." "You're handling the North American expansion," Harrison said dismissively. "This is international. Stick to your lane." Grant stopped, his eyes flicking to Isla. "And who is this? Another one of your flavor of the month assistants?" Isla stiffened. The insult was casual, practiced. Harrison stopped. He turned slowly to Grant. "This is Ms. Corcoran. She is my new external liaison. And unlike you, Grant, she speaks Arabic. So unless you want to sit there and smile like an idiot while Sheikh Al Fayed insults your tie, I suggest you let us work." Grant's face reddened. He looked at Isla with pure, unadulterated venom. "Welcome to the team, Ms. Corcoran. Watch your back. The turnover rate in this position is high." He walked away. Isla felt a chill run down her spine. "Ignore him," Harrison muttered, pressing the button for the boardroom. "Grant is useful, but ambitious. He thinks he should be sitting in my chair." "Is he dangerous?" Isla asked. Harrison looked at her, a strange glint in his eye. "Everyone in this building is dangerous, Isla, including you. That's why I hired you." The boardroom was a cavern of glass and mahogany. Seated at the long table were 5 men in pristine white thorbs and gutras. The air smelled of heavy oud cologne and tension. At the head of the table sat Sheikh Omar Al Fayed. He was an older man with a beard like white iron and eyes that had seen everything. Harrison walked in, extending his hand. "Sheikh Al Fayed, it is an honor." The sheikh stood and shook his hand, smiling warmly. "Mr. Sterling, it has been too long." They spoke in English. The pleasantries were exchanged. Coffee was poured. Isla sat to Harrison's left, a notebook open. She was silent. The meeting began. It was a negotiation for port rights in Jebel Ali. Sterling Global wanted exclusive access for their new fleet. Al Fayed wanted a higher percentage of the shipping revenue. For the first hour, it was standard business. Harrison was tough but charming. The sheikh was stubborn but polite. Then, the sheikh's nephew, a young man named Tariq, who sat at the far end of the table, leaned over to the man next to him. He covered his mouth slightly with his hand and spoke in a rapid, colloquial Emirati dialect, barely audible. "Let the American think he is winning. Once he signs the exclusivity deal, we will invoke the sovereignty clause in the Arabic version of the contract. He will build the infrastructure, and we will seize it within 6 months." Harrison continued speaking about tonnage and tax brackets, oblivious. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The test. She wrote a note on her pad. "Stop. They plan to seize assets using a sovereignty clause in the Arabic contract. Clause 4. Likely hidden." She slid the pad casually toward Harrison. Harrison didn't look down immediately. He finished his sentence about profit margins. Then he reached for his water glass, his eyes glancing at the pad for a fraction of a second. His expression didn't change. Not a muscle twitched. Harrison smiled at the sheikh. "Your Highness, before we proceed to the signing, I'd like to review the Arabic translation of the contract one last time, just for due diligence." Tariq, the nephew, stiffened. He spoke up in English. "Mr. Sterling, the translation is standard. It mirrors the English version exactly. Our legal teams have already vetted it." "I'm sure they have," Harrison said smoothly. "But I have a new pair of eyes I'd like to utilize." He turned to Isla. "Ms. Corcoran, would you mind reading the sovereignty section, specifically regarding asset forfeiture?" The room went deathly silent. Tariq's eyes widened. The sheikh looked from Harrison to Isla, his brow furrowing. Isla stood up. Her legs felt like jelly, but her voice was steady. She picked up the thick Arabic document. She scanned the pages rapidly. "Here," she said, her finger landing on a paragraph near the back, buried in subsection 12. Clause 4b. In the event of national interest deemed by the Port Authority, all physical infrastructure constructed by the foreign entity shall revert to state ownership without compensation after a period of 180 days. She looked up at Tariq. In the English version, this clause refers to a period of 180 years. In the Arabic version, it is 180 days. The silence was deafening. Harrison looked at the sheikh. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. "Sheikh Omar," Harrison said softly. "I thought we were partners." The sheikh turned slowly to his nephew. The look on his face was terrifying. He slapped Tariq across the face, a sharp, cracking sound that echoed in the boardroom. "You fool," the sheikh hissed in Arabic. "You try to cheat a man like Sterling with cheap tricks? You bring shame to this house." The sheikh turned back to Harrison. "Mr. Sterling, I was unaware of this discrepancy. My nephew has been overzealous." "I believe you," Harrison said, though Isla doubted he did. "However, the trust is damaged. I will still sign the deal. But the revenue split is now 70-30 in my favor, and Sterling Global retains full security rights over the port." The sheikh nodded, defeated. "Agreed." When the delegation left an hour later, Harrison remained seated in the boardroom. He stared out the window. Isla packed up her notes, her hands shaking. The adrenaline crash was hitting her. "You did well," Harrison said. He didn't turn around. "They were going to steal the entire infrastructure project," Isla said. "Billions of dollars." "Yes," Harrison said. He turned his chair to face her. "That's the game, Isla. Everyone is lying. Everyone is stealing. The only difference is who gets caught." He stood up and walked over to her. For the first time, he looked at her not as an employee, but as a person. There was a strange intensity in his gaze, a heat that made the breath catch in her throat. "You saved the deal," Harrison said, "and you humiliated Grant Holloway in the hallway. It's been a good morning." "Is that all I am?" Isla asked, emboldened by the victory. "A secret weapon?" Harrison stepped closer. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, as if he wanted to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, but he stopped himself. He dropped his hand. "For now," Harrison said quietly. "Go home, Isla. Get some rest. The car is waiting downstairs to take you to your father's facility. I've already had the payments transferred. He's safe." Isla felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Harrison repeated his warning from earlier. "Tomorrow we go to Paris, and the people there, they make the sheikh look like a choir boy." Isla nodded and turned to leave. As she reached the door, Harrison spoke again. "Isla." She turned back. "Grant Holloway will come for you," Harrison said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "He doesn't like loose ends. Be careful." Isla walked out of the boardroom, her heels clicking on the marble. She had survived the first test. She had the money for her father. She had the respect of the billionaire. But as she rode the elevator down, She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just painted a target on her own back. Grant Holloway's eyes had been cold, dead, and promising violence. And in Harrison Sterling's world, promises were always kept. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Isla stepped out, pulling her phone from her bag. She had a text message from an unknown number. She opened it. The girl who hears everything should learn when to be deaf. Quit now, or your father pays the price. Isla stopped in the middle of the busy lobby. The blood drained from her face. She looked around, scanning the crowd. Dozens of faces. Strangers, businessmen, security guards. Anyone could have sent it. She looked back up at the glass ceiling, toward the 60th floor. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was a player in a game she didn't understand, and the first move had just been made against the only thing she loved. Isla gripped her phone. She didn't run. She didn't quit. She walked out the front door and hailed a cab. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. Before the wheels of Harrison Sterling's Gulfstream G650 even left the tarmac, Isla had made her move. She used her signing bonus to hire 2 off-duty NYPD officers to guard her father's room in Queens. But as the jet climbed into the night sky, a text message on her phone made her blood run cold. Quit now, or your father pays the price. You're vibrating with anxiety, Harrison said, sitting opposite her with a glass of scotch. I know about the threat, Isla. I monitor all communications. It's a scare tactic, likely from Grant Holloway. He thinks you're the weak link. I'm not weak, Isla snapped. No, Harrison agreed, his eyes softening. But Paris is different. We are meeting Bastien Moreau, the head of the Corsican syndicate. We need his shipping lanes. He refuses to deal with translators he doesn't trust. That's where you come in. When they landed in Paris, Isla was whisked into a suite at the Ritz for a tactical transformation. When she emerged, she wasn't wearing a business suit. She wore a backless emerald green silk dress with a slit that ran dangerously high. Harrison stared at her, momentarily losing his composure. It's a decoy, he murmured, offering his arm. Moreau loves beautiful things. He will underestimate you. That is our advantage. The meeting took place at a private gala inside the Musée Jacquemart-André. Bastien Moreau was a massive man who charmed Isla while negotiating ruthlessly with Harrison. Isla played her part perfectly, translating the nuances of French slang while looking like a trophy. But as the night wore on, Isla noticed a waiter circling their table. He was nervous, sweating. As he passed a man in the shadows near the balcony, Isla caught a whisper. It wasn't French. It was Russian. После dessert, яд в бокале. After dessert, the poison is in the glass. Isla's heart stopped. The waiter placed fresh champagne flutes on the table. Harrison, laughing at a joke, reached for his glass. To partnership, Moreau said. To partnership, Harrison replied, lifting the crystal to his lips. Isla calculated the angle. In one fluid motion, she spun in her chair, feigning a clumsy stumble, and swatted Harrison's hand. The glass flew across the table, shattering against the stone balustrade. The liquid didn't just spill, it hissed as it hit the limestone, bubbling unnaturally. Isla! Harrison snapped, shocked. Russian! She whispered urgently, gripping his arm. The waiter! Poison! Harrison looked at the hissing liquid, then at the waiter, who was already backing away. Moreau roared in rage, signaling his bodyguards, but the man in the shadows pulled a suppressed pistol. Thwip! Thwip! 2 of Moreau's guards dropped. Screams erupted. Get down! Harrison roared, tackling Isla as a bullet chipped the stone inches from her head. Move! The service exit! They sprinted through the kitchen, dodging panicked staff, and burst out into the rain-slicked alleyway. My car is compromised, Harrison panted, pulling off his tuxedo jacket to drape over Isla's shivering shoulders. We have to run. I have a safe house in Le Marais. They ran through the dark, winding streets of Paris, hand in hand, the adrenaline pushing them forward until they reached a nondescript heavy wooden door. Harrison punched in a code, and they collapsed inside the dusty apartment. Harrison slid down the door, gasping for air. Isla stood in the center of the room, her dress ruined, her feet bleeding. You saved my life, Harrison rasped, standing up and walking toward her. Again, you could have let me drink it and been free. I need the money for my father, Isla whispered, trembling. Don't lie to me, Harrison murmured, cupping her face in his hands. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a raw magnetic tension. Because I wanted to, she admitted. Harrison didn't speak. He kissed her, a desperate, fierce kiss of two people who had just cheated death. For a moment, the world stopped. But then, Harrison's phone buzzed. He pulled away, breathless, and looked at the screen. His face went pale. The fire in his eyes turned to ice. He turned the screen toward Isla. It was a photo of her father's room in Queens. The guards were gone. The bed was empty. Beneath it was a message. You took something of mine in Paris. Now I've taken something of yours in New York. Isla screamed, falling to her knees in shattered heartbreak. Grant, Harrison whispered, a demon's rage filling his voice. He's a dead man. The flight back to New York was a blur of terrified silence. Inside the cabin of the Gulfstream G650, Isla sat wrapped in a cashmere blanket, staring into the darkness. She hadn't spoken since they left Paris. The image of her father's empty hospital bed burned in her mind. We found them, Harrison said, breaking the silence as the Manhattan skyline came into view. The Brooklyn Navy Yard. Grant is holding him in an abandoned dry dock warehouse. It's isolated and off the grid. Is he alive? Isla whispered. He is, Harrison promised, his eyes cold and lethal. And we are going to get him back. The convoy of black SUVs cut through the rain-slicked streets of Brooklyn, stopping at the rusted perimeter of the shipyard. Harrison grabbed a heavy Kevlar vest and handed it to Isla. Stay behind me, he ordered. Grant is desperate. He's not looking for money anymore. He's looking for revenge. They walked into the cavernous darkness of Warehouse 4. The air smelled of diesel and rot. Under a single hanging work light, Patrick Corcoran sat tied to his wheelchair, looking confused and frail. Standing guard behind him were three heavily armed men in mismatched military fatigues. "Daddy!" Isla cried out. "Ah! Grant Holloway stepped into the light, a pistol in one hand and a remote detonator in the other. He looked unhinged, his tie undone, sweat dripping down his face. "Stay back, or the old man gets it." Harrison stepped in front of Isla, holding up a silver hard drive. "Here it is, Grant, the evidence of your embezzlement. Take it. Take the jet waiting at Teterboro, and disappear." Grant laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "You think I'm stupid? You'll hunt me down. No, I think I'll take the drive, and then I'll finish this." He turned to the three mercenaries behind him. "Check the drive. If it's real, kill the billionaire. We take the girl as insurance." The leader of the mercenaries, a massive man with a tattoo of an 8-pointed star on his neck, checked the drive on a laptop and nodded. "It is real." "Good," Grant sneered. "Kill Sterling." The mercenaries raised their rifles. "Wait!" Isla stepped forward, bypassing Harrison. She looked the mercenary leader in the eye. She recognized the tattoos, Vor v Zakon, the Russian mafia, the same syndicate from Paris. Grant smirked. "Any last words, sweetheart? Maybe in French?" Isla didn't look at Grant. She glared at the Russian killer and spoke. Not in the polite Russian of a diplomat, but in the brutal, gutter slang of the Moscow underworld. "On vam ne zaplatit," she projected, her voice steady. "He won't pay you." The mercenary paused, lowering his rifle slightly. Isla continued, her voice hard as steel. "Etot chelovek, trus, unego net deneg, vse ego sheta zamoroženi. Esli vi ubiote sterlinga, vi ubiote edinstvenog cheloveka, kotori modžet zaplatit vam." This man is a coward. He has no money. All his accounts were frozen this morning. If you kill Sterling, you kill the only man who can pay you. "She's lying!" Grant screamed. "Shoot them! I'm paying you $5 million!" Isla scoffed. "Harrison Sterling stoit 14 miliardov. On zaplatit vam 10 milionov priamosechas. I onnesdast vas policji. Harrison Sterling is worth $14 billion. He will pay you $10 million right now, and he won't give you to the police." She turned to Harrison. $10 million. Wire transfer. Now." Harrison didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone. $10 million. Cleared funds in 30 seconds. The mercenary looked at Grant, then at Harrison. It was a simple calculation. A fugitive with a briefcase versus a billionaire with a phone. The Russian smiled, revealing a gold tooth, and turned his rifle toward Grant. "No!" Grant shrieked. He raised the detonator. "I'll blow us all up!" But Harrison lunged. In the split second of distraction, he tackled Grant to the concrete floor. The detonator skittered away into the dark pit of the dry dock. Harrison delivered a single, powerful blow to Grant's jaw, knocking him cold. It was over. Harrison stood up, panting, blood dripping from a cut on his lip. He walked over to Isla, who was frantically untying her father. "Mr. Corcoran," Harrison said, straightening his torn shirt. "I apologize for the disruption. I'm Harrison. I'm with your daughter." Isla looked up, tears streaming down her face. "You speak Russian," Harrison said, a mix of shock and admiration in his voice. "I told you," Isla smiled weakly. "I'm conversational." Harrison laughed, a sound of pure relief. He pulled Isla into a fierce embrace. "You're fired," he whispered. Isla pulled back. "What?" "You're fired as my liaison," Harrison said, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I don't need an employee. I need a partner." 6 months later, the rain lashed against the windows of the obsidian room, but inside it was warm. Isla sat at the corner table, but she wasn't wearing an apron. She wore a cream dress and a diamond engagement ring. Across from her, Harrison looked over a contract. "The Japanese delegation says the translation is impossible." Isla took the tablet, scanned it, and tossed it back. "They're bluffing. Tell them we walk." Harrison grinned, taking her hand. "What would I do without you?" "You'd be broke," Isla teased, "and eating alone." Harrison raised his glass. "To the waitress who knew too much." Isla clinked her glass against his. "To the billionaire who finally learned to listen." And that is the incredible story of Isla Corcoran and Harrison Sterling. From a humiliated waitress to the partner of a billionaire, Isla proved that true power isn't about money. It's about intelligence, resilience, and the courage to speak up when everyone expects you to be silent. Harrison thought he could test her, but in the end, she was the one who taught him the most valuable lesson of all. Never underestimate the person serving your table. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and linguistic twists, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us know you want more stories like this. Did you expect that Russian twist at the end? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell notification so you never miss a new story. We upload brand new dramas every single week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.